Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. Great honor. So in this session, I'm going to talk with you about, technology, but I will hardly really talk about technology. I want to share with you a new paradigm around research, healthcare, and big data. Let's start with the understanding that in today's world, we have enough data. I think we have enough data in the systems that we built in the last 20 or 30 years. We've been able to gather enough information, enough data in our systems. There are more and more techniques and methods and needs to leverage on that data. But in reality, when we go everywhere around the world, we see that the process of getting the data for whatever we need to do, analysis, research, and so on, is still a very, very cumbersome task. It always looks like this. Since the moment I have the idea until I get what I need, it always takes a journey. I need to talk with IT people, with legal people, with business people. I need to go through regulations and processes. And then I get the data and I miss something. I have to go back to the systems and back and forth, and it always takes a lot of time, and it always involves many people in the process, which is, in our reality, is not really the right thing to do, because we're still talking about big data, but we need to talk more about fast data. It's how fast I get the data. And if I get the data after a year from now, maybe it's not so efficient, even if it's big, sort of big. So there are many reasons for that, many barriers. I'm not going to open this in this session, but it has to do with where the data is located and stored, the volume data of the data. We call it the too much information syndrome. We talk about the language of the data, the semantics. Everyone creates their own language. Everyone creates their own system, so it's proprietary, it's mine. It cannot really talk with yours. We talk about the quality of the data. All of these are very heavy lifted things, but there's another aspect in the game called privacy. How easy is to get the data is also related to how what's the size of the risk I'm taking in order to share the data, use the data, or liberate the data. Again, without getting to all the details, just to give a flavor of how risky it is to deal with data today, we're all following the HIPAA rules around the world, usually following the HIPAA rule around the world. But there's a very easy way to show how risky and unsafe it is to based on HIPAA. In today's world, there are so many data sets out there are so many techniques out there for hackers to be able to re-identify data. So it's not very hard to do some harm once I put my hands on the data. And because of that, and I won't get into the details because I can show you in real time how easy it is to get to a detail of individual, even if you secure it, even if you remove all the identifiers, even if you move to aggregative questions. There are techniques that I can very easily, in front of your eyes, show who is the people around it. So you'll never feel safe once you really release the data. Therefore, you have to go through the process that I will show you in a second. So the bottom line of this, no matter how hard you work to de-identify data, there will be someone, somewhere, with new techniques that will be able to re-identify it. It's just a matter of how hard you will try to do this. And there are many, many evidences out there going as we speak. The graph of breaches in the US, around the world, is going exponentially. In Europe, there's a new regulation released by the GDPR that will be affected next year. In May next year, that says you'll get a fine of 20 million euro if there's a breach in your data. And every patient has to be opt-in. So if you run a research in Europe, you have to opt in every single patient. It will take you forever to get the number of patients based on the new regulation. So everyone in the market talks about risk mitigation, but the beauty of risk mitigation is no matter how you mitigate the risk, there's still a risk. And if there's a risk, I'll be very scared to release the data. Therefore, you have to follow all the regulation, and it will take forever. Very expensive, very cumbersome, and so on. And it's also limiting others that cannot follow the regulation. So if I'm a technology expert, I can do miracles with the data. I have no chance to get the data. So the data is not really liberated. So what we try to show here is a new paradigm of how can I resolve it. But before we talk about the techniques, how we do this, let's spend 2 minutes about big data. So everyone is talking about big data today in the context of technology. I can also do this. I won't. I can show you how advanced are all the components of our platform based on all the new techniques of big data. But I think this is not the right way to talk about big data. Our definition to big data is a little bit different. We define big data as following. If you think big and you have the data, it's big data. The problem with this, that those who can think big do not have the data today. And those who have the data, not always, are the right one to think big, right? Therefore, in between, we have millions of mediators that try to close the gap and bridge between these two, which turns to be a very slow data. So the question here is not necessarily a technology question, is how I remove all the barriers, all the mediators, get the big and the data together, and let those who can think big have the data in no time. There are many differentiators in the platform we offer. The time to data is getting from weeks or months to 0 time. There's a new way to represent patients' data. It's a very comprehensive platform, but I want to focus on what I started with, is how can I resolve the patient privacy? Because once I can resolve in a very disruptive way the privacy issue, then I can do miracles with what we have in technologies. So what we are offering, and we tried it first time here, and I'll talk about this in a second, in Rambam, is what we call the synthetic engine. And the idea behind synthetic engine is to stay away from where the market is today. The entire market tried to agree where to put the dot. The legal people push to privacy, researchers push to utility, and no one agrees where to put the bar, right? Usually the legal are more stronger a bit, right? So our paradigm says, what if I can ignore this completely and come up with a new paradigm that says, let's have 100% of both. And to do this, I will use the analogy of an elephant before I show you the real example, is if I refer to an elephant like a population, and I'm not allowed, and it's very hard for me to get to see the elephant, or even to get close to the elephant. What usually happens in technology when we protect data is we add noise to the data. We use many techniques in order to add noise to the data, to manipulate the data and create the elephant with noise. Which means I get the worth of both worlds. Why? I ruin the data, researchers hate it, and I still know it's an elephant. So I'm not really securing anything. So the idea behind our new paradigm is, let's look at this elephant, but instead of manipulate the elephant or change anything in the elephant, let's create a completely new elephant from scratch that has nothing to do with the real elephant. It's mine, sort of. But if you look at any piece of the elephant, you'll see that it's exactly the same as the original elephant. But the trick here, if I zoom in, you'll see that this new elephant is composed of a completely new set of pixels that do not exist in the real elephant. Which means a pixel is like a person. So in real life, it means if I have a cohort of patients that I want to get a statistical story or stories for this cohort, and it's very hard for me to put my hands on this cohort, what if I can create a new cohort of patients from scratch that has nothing to do with the original cohort, that tells exactly the same statistical story in any way you slice or dice it statistically, but this is not really the real patients. So I can take it, put it on a flash drive, and give it to anyone in the world, and there is a mathematical and scientific proof that there is no way to re-identify the patients. Zero risk for patients' privacy. So it sounds like a crazy idea, and usually when I have crazy idea, my friends in Rambam know that this is the first place I come to. So I came to Professor Biar and said, what do you think about this crazy idea? And I knew that he's not going to throw me out of his room. So we start to play here in Rambam, and we met Dr. Horberg, which is here. And at that time, I hope I'm right, but she conducted a very large and interesting research with 21,000 patients around hypoglycemia events for admitted patients. So we asked to come here, and in two days we synthesized half the cohort of the patient, and we asked Dr. Horberg to rerun the entire research in a statistical machine, in our machine, with our synthetic data, and she did. And she published the results. And it was exactly the same results. In any aspects you look at it, any specificity, sensitivity, the same exact results. But the difference is that I can put this, I can get it in 1 hour, put it everywhere in the network, and no one will never, ever re-identify patients out of this. So it's truly liberating the data to anyone that is running the research. Then we had another one, you can see it in these posters, again with Dr. Hochberg. A little bit more difficult for me to repeat what happens here, but this is the real research, and this is the same research based on synthetic data. As you can see, the same exact everything, the same exact statistical representation of the research, and more important, the same exact conclusion. It doesn't mean that you have to rely on synthetic data. I will show you. You can always get to the real data if you're allowed to, but it lets you immediately, in no time, do this and follow this. The Helsinki committee here in Rambam decided that if you play in the sandbox, you can play with synthetic data with no need for Helsinki approval ahead of time. Another example from Massachusetts, Mass General. You can see the dots are patients. None of the real patients exist in synthetic and vice versa, but the statistical story is exactly the same one. So with that in mind, and I promise not to talk about technology, just the flow, is what we do here in Rambam. We get all the data from all the systems here, aggregate it into what we call the data lake. Add on top of this the semantics layer, which allows the researcher to ask questions in the language they want to research, and not necessarily the way the data is stored in the database. And then for the first time, probably ever, someone in front of a computer, without talking with no one, without negotiating with no one, without even have to have any programming skills, can define the research cohort in almost no time. And our examples in the audience, I can show you how they do this. They define the cohort, very sophisticated, very easy to do user interface-wise, define all the data they want, and then they go through a process that is being defined here in the medical center. So the process decided or defined what you're allowed to do, how you get the data, and so on and so forth. Once you're allowed to get the data, we pull all the data. If you're allowed to get the real data, you get it through these IRB approvals. But if you're not allowed to, for any reason, we synthesize the data and put it in what we call a sandbox. Invite you to play in the sandbox in no time. And I can share the data with anyone in the game with me. And then the system can, and the medical center can decide when you can get the real data, when you can get the synthetic data. And if you get the synthetic data, you get the scientific report alongside that shows you exactly all the elements in the research that you can trust based on synthetic data. And all of this is being wrapped with a cockpit that allows you to do everything from one single website. 2 words about the roadmap, and here. Once you have this in mind, then you can think even bigger. What about what we call the MDClone global grid? If MDClone with synthetic ability is installed everywhere, then I can sit anywhere around the world and run multinational research in no time, because I can share the synthetic data with you everywhere. So I can sit here, or someone can sit in someplace elsewhere, and be able to build the code either from the cloud or from many other places in the world. So how we take all the power of the platform, the synthetic approach, the zero risk, the time to data, and the grid, remove all the mediators, and not only liberate data and liberate research, now we can talk about how to liberate the quality at point of care, how to liberate the population management in no time. Usually build a population management is a very, very heavy lifted process. I have to talk with a vendor, it takes many, many months. I want to do it in 1 hour with no skills in the hand of the head of the department. Then we can talk about how to liberate the clinical trials. And we're also running a pilot here in Rambam with one of the largest pharmaceutical companies to do this. And the most exciting one, I think, is how to be able to liberate precision medicine. How to correlate genotypic data with phenotypic data. And we also had a pilot here in Rambam with Professor Skoretsky and the team, how to take phenotypic data, genotypic data, associate it together, synthesize it, and it shows exactly the same results. But then I can give it to you on a flash drive, first time ever, with phenotypic and genotypic data. Just 2 words about the company, and that's all. In Israel, in 4 months, we signed the deals with all the medical centers. We started here in Rambam. It's already operational, first place in the world, with a very exciting event. at least as of now, we are very happy with the, with the reaction of all the people, with what we do with the system. And after Rambam, everyone saw that it works. We signed deal with 80% of the Israeli market in 4 months. We are now start to work in US. We run a research in Northwestern and in Brigham with the team of Professor David Bates. And many other discussions. So that's all. Thank you.